I was ploughing one Sunday afternoon just on dark, and I was just about finished my paddock and had a blowout on the tractor. So I got off the tractor and looked down on the ground, scratched my head, and I really wanted to finish that so I could go shearing on the Monday for someone else. And there, I'll show you the actual axe. There was this little Aboriginal axe here, and I just picked it up. I didn't know anything about Aboriginal culture at that stage, and I just went home and discussed it about the tractor blowout and left it for a week and solved the problem then. I became very interested in Aboriginal culture, and I then started to learn all I could and got books from libraries, and I finished up going out to Wilcannia and interviewing some guys and Aboriginal fellas. I talked to Yvonne Gurligong's uncle and her grandfather many years ago. There was a massacre in 1896 at Yagara, and those who survived were around Yagara for a while, and then they finished up in the Aboriginal mission out at Condobolin. And I got a bit of information that way, but then when I was tractor driving over the years from there on in, I realised that there was a lot of artefacts just left as their culture died, so I tried to preserve them, and that's what prompted me first up to get interested in Aboriginal culture, then Australian history. Now, I've talked to Aboriginal groups and I've talked to experts down in Canberra about this. Now, I found 6 particular rocks on about half an acre of ground in the hills at Yagara. Now, I believe that's an emu's head. That is the only piece along the top there that's natural. This has all been flaked off from both sides, and you can clearly see it's the shape of an emu's head. Now, this particular piece was used in Aboriginal times when young guys were being made into men. What it meant, I don't know, but I believe it was taken out, and that's all been chipped out. He's got his little jaw and his ears and everything. That's natural. This side at the back, it's all been chipped out there to make it look like it is. And I built a museum in Yagara. I called a public meeting, and there's quite a few people there and in Yagara, and they're quite happy to, good idea, Rob, but we can't, we're too busy. So I said to myself, all right, I'll build a little shed and just put my Aboriginal artefacts in it and a few old pots and pans and things, and I built this museum, and I finished up when I left Yagara and sold my farm. I left it with Hilton and Jean Clemens. They were the grandson and the granddaughter of old Hanbury Clemens, the guy who reported the escort robbery to the police in Forbes, and he had the old Yagara station along the Menagerie Creek there for many years in the early days, and they looked after it, and Hilton's long since died, and Jean's sort of in the late 80s now and couldn't handle it anymore, so I gave all the contents of the museum to a group, and they got a committee, and they've got a museum officially open in 2003. Great little museum. You want to go and have a look if you can, at Yagara. My sister, who was a school teacher in 82, 83, asked me to write down what I could about my knowledge of Aboriginal culture. So I worked on it for a year and gave her the stuff that I had in. I come up with about 19 different subjects within. I was originally more interested in the Aboriginal culture in New South Wales. If you look at most books, you'll see, you know, a black fellow with a big hat on chasing cows up in the Northern Territory. Well, that's nothing to do with Aboriginal culture. I believe Aboriginal culture changed in every area once the white man showed up, and an example of that is in the Wiradjuri country here in New South Wales. Originally, in the area that New South Wales takes up now, there were about 68 different tribal groups. Now they were sometimes 8 or could be up to about 300 groups within the one area that one belief of how and why and their beliefs of the dream time were the same. So that the Wiradjuri district would have taken up roughly about 1/5 of inland New South Wales. They did things a lot different to the guys along the coast because their main diet was fish from the main rivers and things that ran from the mountains to the sea, and different animals, so different techniques were used to catch them, and different myths and legends were around the central west of New South Wales. The Wiradjuri Creek was a very favoured area. It starts only about 4 kilometres from where I'm sitting now in Molong, runs through Manildra and through Yagara and into the Lachlan River. There was a lot of Aboriginals there, and if we look at Mount Canobolas, it was a very sacred area around Orange there, and around, we believe, or scientists believe, that it erupted for the last time about 9 to 12 million years ago. And as the soil was pushed up and Mount Canobolas was finally capped as it is now, roughly in the size it is, all the little streams that emanate from the sources that on both sides or all around Mount Canobolas there, about half run into the Lachlan catchment and about half run into the Macquarie rivers. But for about 100 kilometres all around Mount Canobolas was probably the best country that the Wiradjuri people had, because it was well watered. Even in droughts you couldn't go any further, and you get a drink of water within a day wherever you were in that region because of the little creeks and springs in the hills. And when you got out into Riverina, that was still the Wiradjuri country, but they got it pretty tough when you had to be around the rivers. You couldn't go too far because there was just no springs, there's no water in that flat country. So although they believed in the same myths and legends and that, they had a different lifestyle.